everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
Doing fine. Have to solve a problem, though. There's still another problem left, except the same old problem. Yeah. But the personnel has changed. The National Security Advisor, finally, we got some help. We didn't like that guy Bolton. We didn't like his mustache or anything.
That's right.
And so I doubt if we had much to do with that. But a lot of people didn't like him. And he was identified with being a real hawk. And Trump has to have a balanced approach. He has to be tough and strong. He hates war, and therefore he has to look like he's quieting the people down who want war. So he got a new advisor, Robert O'Brien, and he's sort of establishment type guy. But if we look into his record, policy-wise, not a whole lot different. You know, he worked for Mitt Romney, so that tells you a little bit of something. So it doesn't change, I think, the policy. I think right now Trump is struggling to know what to do. It's that he's right now, I think, a little bit annoyed because if he has to do something militarily or look strong and show a large number of people support him, he only has two countries, United States and Saudi Arabia, who are suggesting that we really, really get tough.
Yeah.
So there must be lots of questions. A lot of people mind the Europeans aren't coming to the rescue. And I guess O'Brien is going to do this. But the Europeans aren't helping out there, but there's no Mideastern country that's helping out either. If this country of Iran was so evil and advancing, into other territory, they'd be all gung-ho over this. But it turns out that the war that we're talking about and trying to prevent it from expanding is, of course, the war against the Houthis in Yemen.
Yeah.
And that we know who started that war. And I think all this whole mess is who started the war. Yeah. But, if you'd ask anybody on television, conservatives or liberals, well, the Iranians started the war, and they just used a drone, to come and do this damage. So, but it's all the Iranians' fault. But we do know the facts are there. There's no argument, and it's been over 4 years. The Saudis have been fighting and killing and maiming so many people in Yemen, and it's not going well, and there's losing support. But I think it's sort of falling into, a position which I've talked about, and that is we are so aggressive and so much of a bully that in time we will be weak and people won't like what we do, and we won't have a lot of allies. But I kept thinking that'd be down the road a little bit. But boy, this might be the beginning of that. Standing up and saying, America, go fly a kite. Yeah, we don't agree with you on this. We want to buy oil from Iran. So that remains to be seen. But it still is a mess, and Trump has some major decisions he'll have to make.
Yeah, and last week when Trump fired Bolton, there was a lot of cheering from our corners, and I poured some cold water on it, saying, you know what, it could actually get worse. Because if you have someone who's just like Bolton on policy, but doesn't have that target, every time we put Bolton in our headlines, people watch it. So they're not going to do that, I don't think, with O'Brien. He doesn't have that baggage. He doesn't have the mustache. He doesn't have the reputation for pushing people around. He's an attorney. He's lived outside the country for a while. I think he's in California, so he's not in the Washington. But as you point out, he was Romney's foreign affairs advisor. See, he may have briefed Romney for some of those debates you had with Romney. So his view, really, everyone says if you want to understand O'Brien, you got to read his 2016 book, While America Slept. And so I didn't read the book this morning, Dr. Paul. I'm not that good, but I did read a couple of things about it. There was a piece in Foreign Policy about the book, a review of it in Foreign Policy. We have a quote here, the first quote about the book. I think this tells you a lot about the man. This is from the review of the book. Robert, which is O'Brien, writes from a series of beliefs and assumptions that I also hold. A deep belief in American exceptionalism, that peace comes through strength, that the U.S. is stronger when it partners with its allies, and when America is a reliable friend to allies. The greatness of America comes from a people that respect the tradition and the rule of law. And yes, there are good guys and there are bad guys out there. This is, American exceptionalism is different than making America great and America first. American exceptionalism is an interventionist foreign policy where we're so exceptional we have to rearrange the world to look just like us. And I think that's a big problem. That says a lot about where he comes from. But the other thing about this title, Dr. Paul, While America Slept, this is written in the Obama years. And this is a myth that goes on in neoconservative circles. That Obama, he was just passive throughout his 8 years. He gutted out the military. He just didn't care. Well, what about Libya, Syria, a big surge in Afghanistan? And what about that military budget? I actually have a graph here that tells you this is what hollowing the military looks like under Obama. Look at that from 12 on. You've got huge spending from 12 to 17, huge spending, a big increase, a lot more money for Iraq and Afghanistan. If that's what hollowing the military and sleeping looks like, I don't know, Dr. Paul.
And it is sad. It has nothing to do with national security. The thing that Trump mentions mostly when this subject comes up, it's good for jobs.
Yeah.
We need to sell weapons, and I guess we need an enemy, and therefore that will help our economy. And on the surface, the claim is that the economy is doing great. But I sort of have to chuckle a little bit about why OBrien position is so great and America is so great is because we have such tremendous respect for the rule of law.
Yeah.
We don't even have respect for our own law. I mean, because we wouldn't be there if we only went over there if there was a declaration of war. So it's preposterous, and they say this. They say this with a straight face, and they never blink an eye, and yet the problem is it doesn't help Trump in any way. Trump's really in a spot, I think, because I see him as wanting to be a dictator, dictatorial at least. That he wants to be strong and tough. He likes that, and he wants to be militarily strong. He doesn't want anybody messing with us, but I don't think he likes war.
Yeah,
and that's good. But the other part looks like you can have a war even if you don't want it. You can bluster. And I think the big thing that we have fallen into a trap on is that we think that sanctions aren't acts of war. What about when we bomb people, even though we don't invade them, we bomb people, we freeze their assets? I mean, the frozen assets goes all the way back to 1953 and dealing with Iran. We freeze their assets, we control the financial markets, we routinely just at the whim of a president, you can put tariffs on people. It's not supposed to be that way. I mean, every day there's a talk, I'll do this, I'll put some tariffs on somebody. And, I guess there's some people who can make a pretty strong case that, we need a tariff here or there. But it's supposed to, this is real old-fashioned, but Article 1, Section 8 says that the Congress has this responsibility, then the president can reject it or sign off on it. But this whole thing that we have a lot of respect for the rule of law is just nonsense. And I think they need some more respect for truth. This whole idea that Iran started these wars and they're at fault. And if they use a drone, they've committed the most vicious crime in the world. But if we use drones, that's okay.
We're exceptional.
But then that's turned around on us. Well, you're so un-American. Can't we do what we want to people and it be called patriotism? Well, maybe more and more people are getting tired of where the patriotism comes from. So I hope we are able to keep influencing a person here and there to think that maybe we ought to be more objective. And the big thing is and I think your point about Obama's wars, that's a tremendous point, because and this is one that sort of defends Trump, because they say, Trump should be more like Obama. And Obama, the Democrats will say, well, you're looking for a warrior too. The hawks are saying you're doing too much, and then they give Obama a pass. So, but we have the media out there, and the media, there are journalists out there, and they're supposed to reveal the truth and understanding by giving us some facts to study.
The watchdogs.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to bring up a second quote, because I think it's important to have a look at, this is also about the book, the quote number 2. We can talk a little bit about this Here's another bit about it. This is from the book. I think it's an intro to the book on Amazon. Robert O'Brien's collection of essays on U.S. national security and policy and foreign policy, with a foreword by Hugh Hewitt, who we know who that is, a big neocon. It's a wake-up call to the American people. The world has become steadily more dangerous under President Obama's lead-from-behind foreign policy. The Obama administration's foreign policy has emboldened our adversaries and disheartened our allies. Indeed, Obama's nuclear deal with Iran is a 1938 moment. At the same time, the U.S. military has been cut and risks returning to the hollow force days of the 70s. O'Brien lays out the challenges and provides common sense, peace through strength solutions that allow the next president to make America great again. All lies, the whole thing.
See, I always thought this crack with our allies would come, but it would come sort of after the great emergency in the financial sector, financial markets crashing. And I think it looks like this is getting maybe even ahead. We're having financial problems, internationally, and the Federal Reserve is unable to maintain the low interest rates. So, but it looks like it'll come together, and that's always been my assumption, that they'll come together, and this is going to end. You can see why, if we all of a sudden can't afford this anymore, and you just showed how much you're spending, that can't last forever, that the foreign policy has to change. But you can't maintain an authoritarian, tough-minded foreign policy, and it's all a bag of wind, and you don't do anything. So that's why the hawks are saying, you just can't say this. You've got to show something, and we need more Lindsey Grahams to show that America is a strong, powerful nation, and we always back up our words with action.
Yeah, and speaking of Graham, the Daily Beast, he called him up to attack Trump. Maybe next time they play golf together, Trump will hit an errant one and knock him on the noggin. But here's what Graham is furious. He said, clearly what we're doing with Iran isn't working. Well, duh, right? And so what is he encouraging? More of the same. He said Trump's measured response to the shoot down of the drone, remember that? He said, I don't want to attack Iran over this drone. It was seen by the Iranian regime as a sign of weakness. And Trump, hit back at that. He said, no, it's a sign of strength that some people just don't understand. And that was a pretty good response, because you talked about this a lot in your campaigns. Sometimes you have to be stronger by resisting the temptation to intervene. But what Trump doesn't understand, unfortunately, although he gets this, but if he disagrees with Graham on so many of these fundamental things, why is he hiring Graham's ideological colleagues, twins, people like O'Brien? He surrounds himself with these people. I can't figure it out.
See, the one thing that Trump has added is more sanctions. How many times has he put sanctions on and add more on and broken treaties and all this stuff? So he's going to run out of those options. And right now, another sanctions on Iran, it doesn't matter, because their job is to get around the sanctions, and
they're doing it. Yeah.
And they seem to be doing okay. So it's all, I think, a weakening of the empire. I think the empire is going down. Not this year and not next year, and the dollar's going to last for a while. But the empire is weakening, and that's what we're witnessing right now. And soon, the financial problems are going to catch up to these international. But right now, we're not in the driver's seat. And these people who like to be king, they all want to be king or part of a king that gives advice to the president and does all this stuff. They like this, and they talk themselves into it. I don't think they lose any sleep over their position, no matter how many people die, and no matter how many unconstitutional wars are fought. How many people do you think that we had to argue with in 2003, over going to the Iraq War?
Yeah.
And we even talked about there could be a lot of deaths over this, and just look at what's happened. Do you think they look back and say, boy, golly, we failed, we made a mistake and we shouldn't have done it? The only person we know about that really switched his mind on this and felt really guilty about it was Walter, our
Yeah.
friend Walter Jones,
Yeah.
unfortunately, who has passed. And but that doesn't happen. They just buckle down and they blame the people who won't go along or accept that. See, you like Vietnam.
Yeah.
Vietnam wasn't a tragedy. It was all those warmongers that
Liberals.
didn't want to do it. And of course, the theory is that they thought Kennedy was a wimp.
Yeah.
He got himself into trouble, because of that. So no, they have to get people to look strong, and they have no conscience from my viewpoint.
We did our best. We've talked ourselves blue in the face, but we also featured about a 25-minute speech, 25-minute something that Trump could have really sunk his teeth into. Here's what you need to do to make America great again. And that was Colonel McGregor when he spoke at our conference last month. And I watched that several times. And you wouldn't believe how popular that speech is, Dr. Paul. Everyone who's talking, when Bolton was fired, and all the different forums and things people were talking about, this is who he needs, listen to this speech, sending around the link to this is the kind of thing he needs. Unfortunately, he didn't pay attention. And as you point out, finding ourselves without allies. And we originally were going to talk about this Politico piece before the naming of the new National Security Advisor came out, about the fact that it's really the U.S. and Saudi Arabia alone if we want to hit Iran. And that's why I think he settled on sanctions, which is a dumb thing, but not necessarily a bad thing compared to war. But Politico quotes a guy from the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, super pro-Israel, super pro-war with Iran think tank. Even this guy says, quote, "There is no offensive coalition against Iran, not there in Washington or anywhere else in the world right now." So that says a lot. No, there's no evidence. Nobody believes it. Germany and France have been burned by these assertions by Pompeo, the great liar, before, and now they just say, forget it, we're not interested.
The question we've asked many times is when Trump turns down somebody like McGregor, does he do this because he really is seriously in disagreement? He doesn't agree with this stuff until he doesn't want to do it. I'll be nice and polite and say he's on the possible list. He didn't even do that. Now, is it that? Or is it that he has a lot more sympathy for peace and a different foreign policy, but there's the behind-the-scenes political pressure? The people who we might say are in the deep state, does he have to answer to them?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, he's a very weak president.
Yeah.
So what is it? I guess you're the one that has to have the answer. And so, but it could be sometimes a combination of all these things. All we know is he's not strong for the viewpoint of non-intervention, because we don't have any. Well, he talks to Rand, which is very nice that he does, and he politely listens. Mm-hmm. And it's just too bad that he doesn't have a little bit more influence with Trump.
That's ironic, though, that deep down it's a weak president, unfortunately, if that's the case. But it's easy. Those of us, and we try to encourage Trump when he does the right thing. But I have to say, it was kind of like a punch in the gut this morning. It's easy to lose faith and to really give up on this administration, and to sort of drop the idea that Trump has good angels on one shoulder that he listens to occasionally. But there is a little bit of good news, Dr. Paul, because I don't want to end on a sour note. The one good thing is that Robert O'Brien is an expert hostage negotiator. That was his job in previous administration. So I just hope that maybe if Trump is being held hostage by the neocons in his administration, get O'Brien in there and get his skills in gear, negotiate, get him out of this situation he's in. Maybe a hostage negotiator is what we need.
Well, I know a job we could give him. Work out the negotiation on a hostage that's being held by the United States government, Edward Snowden, and interfering with Assange's arrest and incarceration and leading to the tragedy there. That's what we need to do, and that's where we really have the responsibilities for. But let's hope those kind of talents could be used to help what we're doing. But once again, interventionism has failed. It's becoming more apparent. This whole situation in Iran could explode quickly. Just think on the past weekend. It came pretty suddenly. And it's hard to believe, with all the technology of our government knowing every single thing we do and record every conversation if they want, and they continue to do it, wouldn't have been able to see a couple missiles or a couple drones come over, and there were evidently a lot of bombs dropped. Oh, we never had any warning on that, but we're going to study it, and we're going to go and look and see, yes, that looks like a spot they could have sent some missiles, although so therefore that's where it was done, and how could it ever happen? It's on territory controlled by the Iranians. I'd have never guessed it. But the answer to this is that, yeah, we can't know all the answers. We don't know it, but we do know that if we weren't there, we would be better off, the world would be better off, and there wouldn't be a war that we're supporting, and we wouldn't be close allies of Saudi Arabia and been an obsessive in our treatment of Iran. And that is in a negative way. Let them figure it out. You know, if there is a conflict over there, and the Saudis said, you know, the Iranians shouldn't have done that. Let the Saudis deal with the Iranians, but not the American taxpayer and the American military and all these things. I don't even care if it's good for jobs to do that. Besides, it isn't good for jobs. Military Keynesianism is not a good economic policy. You want the people to have the money. You don't want to avoid war. War is not a good economic benefit to anybody. So there's a lot of advantages for non-interventionism. Besides, it's the right thing to do. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.